sometimes I like to just come on here not knowing exactly what, how things are going to unfold. I just have to polish off my Cardio Miracle. You hear the little rattle of the shaker bottle there. A little spring in there. I love Cardio Miracle. This time of year, we have, in fact, lately we've had a lot less sunshine, right? And in Utah, a lot of storms, kind of depressing. The holiday season, the Christmas and New Year's is over. And I think it's more important now to take care of our health than any other time. There's all the New Year's resolutions and all that. I think that's all a bunch of hokum. Every day should be an awakening to try to better ourselves. Now, look, some of us just aren't blessed with great health. I get that. I know that. We have it in our family. We know that. We know that. But we can do little things. And the Lord will qualify our efforts. Now, I don't know all the science around Cardio Miracle, and you know that I've talked about it before. And I've had John Hewlett, the creator of this, and we've had him on a few times, and it's been good. We had the great event where we watched The Chosen, and John and Janet were able to invite us all, and we had that really cool event of watching The Chosen and getting together and seeing each other. But I just want to say how much I'm grateful for it, the product. I really do like it, and I wouldn't talk about it if I didn't really feel that it helps my body and gives me the energy, the mental focus, the healing that I feel like I need. I'm 65, and it's not ancient, but it's getting up there. And I'm missing this, and wake up and go, okay, what's gonna kind of hurt today, And anyway, I think having an edge is really good. You can go on their website, www.cardiomiracle.com, and I'll put the link to it there. If you want to try it out and purchase it, cows is the discount. I'll put it in there. My sister has had this persistent cough. She had COVID. She had a persistent cough. She's a little bit older than me. And my other sister has some health issues. We got them some Cardio Miracle. My one sister actually ordered it online while they came up to visit us during the festive season. And the other one, we had some and we gave it to her. Actually, she bought it from us. And I'm hoping, I heard through my wife, they communicate. I don't know if it's a guy thing or what, but I get on these text threads, I can't take it. I can't do it. And I put it on silent. I don't like to be rude and like block them out or whatever, because I love all these folks. I do. I love them. They're family. But I'm just not a fan of the constant, hey, look at this and da-da-da, look at this picture. But I don't know. I'm a bad person. But so my wife actually stays more in touch with my sisters than I do. And anyway, I've heard that she is, the cough is leaving her. I'm really anxious to hear on both of my sisters how, and I said, you have to take it twice a day because that was the mistake I made. I was kind of casual about it, but there's a lot of stuff going on out there. We hear a new strain of COVID and are getting that instruction to get the booster, and you all know how I feel about all that stuff. I would much rather take Cardio Miracle, right? And I always like to get the last drop. So there you have it. I'll keep you updated on that. On my sister. Now, I have a plethora. Do any of you know what a plethora is? I have a plethora of things here. I want to point you, and I'll put the link to this too. Troy Abels, he has you guys have heard me talk about him. I've been on his program, but he had a really fascinating discussion with Hannah Stoddard. I think it's Hannah. On the changing of the history of the church and the infiltration of that. I think his name is Leonard Arrington, I think is his name. Church historian in the 70s and 80s, and really influential in a lot of the narratives. And also a guy with that influenced and they were kind of cohorts is Bushman, who did Rough Stone Rolling, who I've said for years is a horrible book. In fact, when I was stake president in Park City, that book came to light during that time period, and I heard a lot of members of the church and in our stake in Park City talk about that book and how great it was. I went, I've read virtually every biography on Joseph Smith that I know of, and I'm going to read it. So I read it, and the spirit was not there. I hated the book, and I actually addressed it in some meetings in our stake, where I just said, I don't care for this book. I felt it was my responsibility. So I was really glad to hear all that kind of stuff, but a lot of it. So I'll put the link on Troy. His YouTube channel is The Last Dispensation, and it's 2 hours. I got through most of it, but not all of it. But it's really good. And Jared with Christian Homestead is also on there. But I think Troy's the one hosting it. So I'll put you the link to that. But a seer stone is an interesting thing. Now we talked a little bit about this. I talked about this before, the Urim and Thummim, the relics of the restoration. Remember I talked about that. Well, I have a few relics of my own that I wanted to show. First off, the seer stone. You can go on the church website and see it. Now here's one of the issues that I see with people like Hannah, people like Greg Madsen with Quick Media. They seem to think that everything just is kind of in a bubble. This is just my opinion, and but like with Greg, it's BYU and the professors, and they're on this leftist agenda and critical race and all these things, and that it's separate. It's almost as if the leadership doesn't know about it. And Hannah does kind of the same thing. She says, okay, here's Bushman, here's Arrington, and here's these very left-leaning, liberal, progressive, and want to change the history of the church because they don't like to hear about Urim and Thummim. They don't like to hear about gold plates and so they change the history. But the next step is why is it on the church website then? Why is it on the church website? And I've maintained for a long time that there is this infiltration. There's this infiltration, and there's let's find our favorite apostle to get our agenda through, and it's just the nature of a human run organization. And that's why I love when our current prophet, President Nelson, said we have to live by the Spirit, because we just don't know. Otherwise, we can just, get swayed back and forth through all these things. Now, a seer stone to me is not like the end of the world, whether Joseph Smith used it or not. If you go on the church website, there's a little video, and you can click on this video, and it's somebody from the church history department explaining the stone. Now, and there's a picture of it. And I would recommend that you do that, because then you can see it's on the church website. So if it's on the church website, then what do you do? What do you do with it? And see, this is where I think Hannah is like, it's like, well, Ezra Taft Benson was against Arrington, and so was Joseph Fielding Smith. But did he have some allies? And I say, yeah, absolutely, he had allies. He was the church historian for 10 years. And then beyond that, as they changed the history, the church history department or whatever, they changed it to BYU, and Arrington became the director of that after his 10 years as the church historian. And then after it changed from BYU, and it actually went back to church headquarters, and now it's typically a 70 that is assigned as the church historian. We knew LeGrand Curtis, who just got released last year. He was one of the general authorities that we worked directly with when we were on our mission, and his new assignment was leaving us to be the church historian as a 70. Before that, I think it was Elder Snow of the 70 that was the church historian. And we had opportunities to visit with him when we were on our mission. We actually had the opportunity as mission presidents and wives in Utah to go to the church history museum. I think that's what it was called. And we got to see Brigham Young's cane. We got to see the first mission report of Samuel Smith, I think it was, Joseph's brother, who went on his mission, and he wrote out his report. We got to see that report as turned into Joseph Smith on this. So these things, and I'm saying, like, how about the Sword of Laban? I said that as a mission president. Do you have that? Can we look at that? And the guy kind of cracked a smile, but wasn't I don't think he appreciated somebody, saying that type of thing. But he said, well, I would show you the seer stone, but it's in the office of the first presidency. That's exactly what he said. He goes, it's in their office. So that was interesting to me. I was at a county fair a couple of years ago, and there was a booth. I don't know, I'd call it booth, but they had all kinds of rocks. I have always loved rocks. When I was a kid, the couple of times we went to California on that long journey from Salt Lake to California to Disneyland, going through St. George, there were always these really cool rock hounds that had their shops, and you could stop and get, and we always did, I always loved it. Well, at this county fair a couple of years ago, I saw a stone that looked really familiar to me, and I got a little history on it from the lady running the shop, but I usually write it down, or I have a piece of paper, and I didn't do it, but I'm pretty sure this is the stone. Check this out. Is this cool or what? And I'm pretty positive, that this is the same type of rock, and I just called this up. It's called a banded iron jasper. Branded iron jasper, or another name for it is the Genesis stone. And pretty sure this is the same type of stone that Joseph found in that well. That's that is the stone that's now with the church. It's just the stone that you can see on the website, and you'll see that It's really similar. Doesn't have this in it. This kind of a, probably devalues it having this streak in here, but it's really cool. Get it in the sun there. And it's just an awesome stone. But the one that Joseph Smith had, interestingly enough, it was polished and roundish. A lot of people thought that, or have concluded that it was probably what they call, a gizzard stone from a dinosaur, where they'd eat stone like a chicken to help digest their food. And then if it's a large animal, it's pretty good sized gizzard stone. So anyway, I have that. Now look, because I have this, doesn't mean that I feel like I'm going to receive revelation or be able to translate or do anything with this. I just like having it. Okay, I told you I was going to purchase some Seer stone, or not Seer stone, excuse me, Urim and Thummim. And I did, and I got them. I can't remember if it was Amazon or what, but here we have the Urim, and the Thummim. Urim and Thummim. And here's what it says. The Urim, the white, and the Thummim, the black, were used by the Hebrew high priest for divination, the act of seeking knowledge through indirect means from God. Thummim translates to innocence or purity, yes or yes. And Urim roughly translates to light or curses or no. So that's kind of interesting, right? And it came with this cool little blue bag. So I now have the Urim and Thummim. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. I love it. I have shelves of relics and things. Now, I think I pointed this out once before on a video, but I have some really interesting finds that I've found in, I'm looking, yes, this is all Utah, and this was in Morgan County, actually, pretty close to where I used to live. This is a piece of petrified wood, and the thing I find so fascinating with this is you can actually see a knot right there where a branch came out. See how cool that is? And it's been crystallized. And I found this just walking through a quaky kind of foresty area where the topsoil is pretty thick, and so not a lot of rocks exposed. And I just caught a glimpse of this one, and it's just fascinating to see, where the knot comes out there, and there's another knot right there. Really cool find. I love this one, right? Some I purchase, but some I find. This one out by a little town in Fremont. I guess close to Green River, maybe. I can't remember. Out wandering in the desert. This is one of my most fascinating finds, but it's a dinosaur bone, okay? But check this out. I'm holding it for the last. You can see the tendon right in there. Check that out. Is that cool or what? I found a lot of dinosaur bones, but nothing quite like this. This is amazing, very dense and heavy, and just fascinating, especially with that tendon right there. A fossilized tendon, go figure, okay? Now, the one that I think is the most unique, I was hiking on top of a mountain in the Wasatch Range, probably in Summit County, on top, let's see, no, probably close to where you'd have Summit County, Salt Lake County, and Morgan County kind of meeting. Now, there was just a rock. just a rock, probably. So what do we have? We have sedimentary rock, sandstone. There's a lot, you know, the layered rock. We have igneous, which would be, isn't that volcanic and that type, and then metamorphic? I'm going back, I can't remember. But this is just a rock. This is just a rock, okay? And it was just exposed, and something caught my eye. And this is so fascinating to me because this is inside a rock. Check this out. It's a seashell, an imprint. There's one here that's actual there, and then check that out. I mean, how could that be inside the rock on top of a mountain? This is one of my cool finds. I've actually taken this to a couple of geologists, and they're just like, what? You know, because if it was in a you know, a layer of sedimentary rocks, you know, and then there was an upheaval, that's okay. But this is actually inside a metamorphic rock. Check that out. It's just awesome. Okay, so I've shown you all those. Now, I told you I went muskox hunting years ago and hunted with the Inuit, the Eskimos, way up in Cambridge Bay. You can look it up. It's way up in the middle of nowhere, in the Arctic. And when we were on this hunt for muskox, this giant wolf was way out there, half a mile away, and they spotted him. And I could hear him talking. It was Sammy and David. And I remember that. But we had a very difficult time communicating verbally, but with a lot of hand motions and visuals, we communicated. So it was us three for a few days hunting, for quite a few days actually. And I finally communicated to him. I said, do you want to go after that wolf? Because me as a non-resident, non-native, really, was the big thing. You can't hunt wolves, but as a native, you can. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And then they communicated back, well, you know, we're guiding you on a muskox hunt. We probably shouldn't be hunting wolves. And I said, hey, I'm here for the adventure. Somehow I was able to communicate that. So we went after this wolf and they got it. It was great. In return, I mentioned this story. Sammy gave me a pair of wolfskin gloves that his wife had made. And I used them the rest of the trip because my $200, I don't know where I got them, probably REI or something at the time. They didn't really keep my hands all that warm, 20, 30 below zero, right? On a snowmobile sometimes. So I actually dug these out, and I wanted to show these gloves to you to show that I'm not just blowing smoke. Man, these are so cool. So these are my wolfskin gloves, and handmade by Inuit Eskimos. And look at that kind of cool, just cloth. I don't know exactly I don't know if this is wolf. I don't think it is. I think it could be muskox, or it could be caribou. That's probably what it is. Up there, that far north, they have what's called the Prairie caribou. That's probably what this is. But you talk about warm and cool looking. So these are my wolfskin gloves, handmade. I love the smell of them. And you just can't imagine how warm your hands are in those. These are all from nature, you know, it's just so cool. Okay, now I wanted to just cover some current events that are going on that aren't so current. I'm behind the times, not when it's actually happening, but about talking about them. So we have the football player, Buffalo Bills football player, who collapses with a heart attack. You know, and and thank goodness he's doing better, right? He's doing better. And it's amazing how they were able to revive him. So that's all good news. But do we ever just question what the heck is going on with these athletes collapsing and having these heart conditions? Now, some of us, I don't need to say what we immediately think of what the issue is, because it's the common denominator of the last couple of years, right? So we have that, and there are many others. Another one that pops into my mind of a current event is Ben Gazier. Ben Gazier. That I might have that name wrong. He's the security administrator. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry, but he's part of this new administration with Benjamin Netanyahu that was able to, in the Knesset, their government, get a quorum together of really similar to what has been going on with Congress, trying to get a speaker, right? Similar type of thing had to happen in Israel, and Benjamin Netanyahu was able to get enough votes and enough support, and one of them was this very cool conservative guy, Ben Gazier, I think. Jazeer, I could be wrong on that. Ben. Anyway, he goes up on the Temple Mount last week, and not on the scheduled time when you're allowed to go. And he has his security team with him, and he goes up for a 15-minute visit. That's it. Just walks around, goes up there. I love that. Hamas said they were going to, retaliate for this desecration. The Palestinian Authority said that there was going to be death, as a result of this. All these governments came out. Even Biden came out and spoke up against this horrific event that took place, and how he should never have done that. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's the most sacred site for Jews, and they're only given a small window of time to go up there, just on the Temple Mount. They can't pray, they can't do anything. It's absolutely horrific, in my opinion. Horrific. It's horrible. It's the biggest it's the biggest attack on religious freedom, I think, anywhere, to preclude somebody from their most religious site. And if you think about it, and Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, mentioned this on an interview with Eric Steckelbeck on The Watchman. He said, when the Temple Mount has been controlled by Jews, it's been open to everybody. But when Christians had it during the Crusades, just Christians. When Muslims have had it, they control it. But when Jews have it, it's for the whole world to come to. When Solomon built the temple originally, and it was for the whole world to come, and they did. And then when it was expanded under Herod, at Christ's time, Christ lived during that time, the world came there. But not now. It's a shame. So we have that. But it is exciting that we have somebody like that is willing to just go up. I hope it just expands and expands and expands. So that's kind of cool. I'm distracted by looking at my relics here. Oh, sorry. We have this family that was slaughtered by the dad, and then the dad killed himself in Enoch, Utah, which is just outside of Cedar City, right on the I-15, on the way you go through there. Men's hearts will fail them. I suspect we're going to see more and more of these things the closer we get to the coming of Christ. in his power and glory. And I want to talk about that in just a second here. But it's the time to be tested. It's so that there's no excuse. Satan can't come back and say, hey, I wasn't given a chance to tempt people. I wasn't given a chance to thwart. They didn't have their agency. This is all about agency, in my opinion. And so it's going to get ugly. And God, the Father, is allowing this to happen so that we can have a choice. We can have a choice of which way we want to go. And I think it's just imperative to find ourselves in the Scripture, living a life of service, so that we can have the influence of the Holy Ghost, so that we can really detect what the heck is going on. And when we see these situations, these horrible, I've been kind of consumed with this situation that happened where a dad would murder his whole family and his mother-in-law and then take his own life. What's the thought process here? My first thought was, why don't you just take your own life? And if it's that bad, you check out. And that's kind of stupid, because trying to think of why somebody would do this kind of thing. And it's interesting to me how little people talk about it. I don't like talking about it. I'm talking about it right now, and I'm kind of like stumbling around. But man, it's real, and it's right now. And 8 people in one home gone. Now, and think of the effect, the ripple effect this is having. I'm like so far on the outside of this. I don't know anybody. I'm not connected in any way that way. And I'm affected by it. I can't imagine friends and neighbors, the ward, the stake, the community, and then the family, the extended family. Just simple things like what do you do with a home like that now? I bet the next door neighbors are thinking, we got to get out of here. This is just horrible. There was one so touching story, and it hit home to us, but the neighbor girl who was going through similar things that our granddaughter's going through with chemo and whatnot. She's looking over. Her dad is reporting this. He's the next door neighbor, a close neighbor. And he says, my daughter is looking across the street going, who am I going to ride bikes with now? They're gone. I mean, can you imagine? This is, the first thing I thought was men's hearts will fail them. Their ability to just deal with the stresses. Now, the wife had filed for divorce, I think a couple of weeks before or something like that. And so obviously there was, a lot of stress going on. But what would lead a man to do such a horrible thing? I have no idea. And to think of the horror that, the first person to go probably didn't know what was happening, but maybe did. But then the subsequent ones. Now, you can, having been to Masada 3 times now and go through the story a bit, there really was only one murder-suicide, one person. It wasn't a mass suicide, in a way. So they found the pottery shards, the pieces of pottery where the guys had put their names, And it was like, okay, the last guy. So as they can put it together, and there was a woman and I think a couple of children that survived or that were left to live and tell the tale. But on top of Masada, as the Romans were coming up, and these last holdouts, these rebellious Jews that did not want to be slaves to the Romans, this was their last holdout. It's down by the Dead Sea, and right below it is a really good possible site of Gomorrah. But anyway, instead of being conquered and imprisoned and being their liberties destroyed, they decided to eliminate themselves. And the way they did it was apparently, and you know, I have to say that it's probable, but we don't know for sure. But so individuals would draw lots, and they would take the lives of their family, and then this individual would take the life of the guy that took the life of his family. And then it just went up and up and up and up until there was one guy left to kill the last guy, and then he in turn then would kill himself. So there was only one suicide, if you think of it, only one suicide, and that was the last guy. The rest were killed. And they'd rather be killed by their own, controlling their own situation, than being conquered by the Romans. So I try to, you know, having that on my mind, I think of that, and I think, is that similar to what happened here? No. As near as we can tell, the Masada folks had already knew exactly what they were going to do, and they were all in. It wasn't we're going to force you. This was forced. From what I can see, and he just wiped out his family, this guy did, and then took his own life. Now, you know, we obviously have to be careful in because we just don't know everything, but I think these things need to be talked about, or at least brought up, because they were supposedly active Latter-day Saints. You know, the pictures that you see, they just look like the perfect family. And we just don't know what's going on in people's lives. So prayers. My wife and I have been, she's more specific in her prayers than I am. She's better at everything, but she's been praying for all those involved with these. She's been praying for specific people. I'm kind of the cover, you know, I'll pray for a few specifics, but then the rest I just cover under this big umbrella statement, and which probably isn't as effective, but I'm thinking of them, and I know God knows. So hopefully my prayers are being heard as well for these poor folks. I don't know, crazy times, but there's also wonderful times, and the times that we're in are the last of the last days, and we're going to see an increase in this, in my opinion. Have any of you seen what eggs are now? I don't know what they are in the rest of the country, but like 18 eggs is like $8 or some crazy thing, you know? I mean, and we went to Costco the other day, and there were no eggs. There were no eggs. You couldn't buy eggs. Now, we're fortunate because we have two sons fairly close by, and their wives, and they raise chickens and they have eggs, and we get eggs. In fact, my wife made homemade eggnog. My son-in-law in Texas made it, and it inspired us to make some, which it requires a lot of eggs, and oh my goodness. It was good. Probably against the word of wisdom Yeah, we used to joke around and say, well, this is so good, it's got to be against the word of wisdom. Anyway, um, a lot of things going on right now that are sobering, humbling, and they make you think. They make you think of where we're individually at. Now, the one last thing I wanted to mention, and I'm trying to be careful on this because it's an insight from the temple, and I don't want to push the envelope on anything. I love the temple. I love the ancient ritual of the temple. It's just so good. But if we think of some of the changes that have taken place, and one has to do with the preparatory priesthood, think of that step being eliminated. And if we think of the preparatory priesthood as preparing for the coming of the Lord, we talked about this with John the Baptist. When at the end of Malachi, it says that John had the spirit of Malachi, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children, children to the fathers, and he was the preparer. Prepare ye the way of the Lord. Okay? And so John the Baptist, with the Levitical priesthood or the preparatory priesthood, was preparing the way for the Lord. If that process is eliminated in the temple, and you'll just have to kind of figure it out, what I'm saying, then perhaps the preparation is over and one of the aspects of the Lord's second coming has already happened. That came to my mind yesterday as I was in the temple. And I thought, could be the Adam on Diamond visit. It could be, other subsequent visits. That the preparation time is basically over because that part has been eliminated in the temple. And the other thing that came to my mind is how, as Adam and Eve are making covenants, we're making covenants, but we're in a sense, we're Adam and Eve. And even at the end of the whole endowment session, there's this it's like Adam and Eve need us and we need them in order for everything to work. And you have to really think about the words and things that are going on where there's this connection with the Ancient One, Father Adam, and his bride, his wife, Eve, as we pass through the veil. And I love it. It was a huge insight for me where they need us and we need them. And otherwise the whole earth would be a waste, would be wasted. And I just, man, it was big for me. Now, the other last thing I wanted to talk about is this idea of every valley will be raised up and every mountain made low, and it'll be a flat plain. It's in Handel's Messiah, right? Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill made low, the crooked straight, and the rough places plain, right? And you think, okay, so what happens to my Teton Mountains? What happens to the Wind River Mountains? What happens to the Uintas? What happens to the Matterhorn, the Swiss Alps, and then the Nepal and Tibet, the Mount Everest and K2 and all that. What happens to those cool mountains? And And because, again, in the temple, we hear, and in Scripture, we hear that it's to beautify and add variety and give variety. Beautify and variety. Now, in my personal opinion, that's not going to change. It's not just going to be Kansas or whatever. No offense. Kansas is beautiful. Been through it. But we are going to have, in my opinion, continued to have through the millennial reign, and even in beyond, perhaps, hopefully, we're going to have these variety and beauty. And I think what this is all referring to is, metaphorically, we're not going to have cancer to deal with. We're not going to have food shortages. We're not going to have sin and evil that cause these huge mountains to climb, huge valleys. Think of the metaphors that we have in Scripture, where David in Psalms is saying, though I travel through the valley of the shadow of death, the valley of death, yes, he is talking about a physical valley, in my opinion, but he's also talking about his despair. I will fear no evil, because I know the big picture, and I know that there's a God that sits on the throne and he's in charge. And he has sent his son, Jesus Christ, to redeem me. And so I think it's a metaphor. That's just me. And I think the Tetons are going to remain. It's where I met my wife. It's where we go virtually every year. And we look at those mountains and we just go, dang, it's all true. It's all real. It's all a blessing. And to think that it's going to be flat. But on the other hand, when we think of, our backs aren't going to hurt, just all the physical stuff, okay? I'll just say that. That's one thing. But then to think of people being honest, people, not having to worry about all the security. Think of your typical day of what you have to do, to kind of prevent unsavory people doing things to you. You lock this, you lock that, you have cameras, you have this, you have that. And I know some people don't live that way, and that's awesome. And I try not to as much as possible. But if we really think about it, there's a lot that goes on in our lives just because there's dishonesty, there's criminal minds and activity going on. That will be eliminated. So that's making rough places plain. That's putting everybody on the same level, if you will. You're not going to have some people up here. You're not going to have some people down here. It's going to be like this, but you're still going to have the Tetons. I think. So I share that with you. You guys are so great, so awesome. I'll put the link up for Troy Abel's video. It's really good. It brings up a lot of cool things, and I think that Hannah Stoddard is sharp. She's good, but I also think we have to think a little beyond that. Why is it continuing to be? Personally, on the church website and all this other stuff. Personally, I think the church has been infiltrated. And I talked about it. I talked about the CIA. I've talked about a lot of things. And some people think, that's wrong. Well, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong. Just to expand on that just for a second, and a lot of people think if it's on the church website, the prophets absolutely approved it and you should not question it. And I say, no, That's not the way the Lord's kingdom works. This is the kingdom of God on earth, not the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of God is run by individuals. It's a human effort, and there's going to be things that just cause all kinds of things. Now, this idea of a faith crisis, I don't really like that phrase at all, but that's what's being used, faith crisis. And what generates a faith crisis? What's this? What's that? To me, it's pretty simple. It's having a lack of understanding of the canonized scripture and what goes on. I feel like if that is studied and really studied, not just read, but studied, you get this overall view of things that allows the Spirit to work within you. Right with that, or level with that, is service to your fellow man. When you combine those two things, I feel like, or putting others before yourself, I feel like that is the qualifier for the Spirit to work within you to decide, what's right and wrong, what's this and that. If you eliminate one of those two things, doubts and negativity and things like that creep in. It's just my opinion. It's just my opinion on this. I've kind of boiled it down to those two things. As far as avoiding a faith crisis, is service and study. Now, I include prayer in study because I don't think you can fully study without prayer. So, you could break down all these subcategories, but for me, true study involves prayer. So I guess I should have said that as well. But and you guys have your things, and they're probably better than mine. But I don't think that a faith crisis is a new thing. I don't think it's I think it's ramping up, and that's just a sign of the times. This is the apostasy that's spoken of. Most people think that the apostasy was strictly what we would think of as the great apostasy, and that's once the original apostles were killed, the authority's taken, and the church goes into apostasy, and then you have the restoration. Well, there's an apostasy in the latter days as well. Now, some people would say the latter days is just right after Christ, and I think there's some evidence for that. But then there's the last days of evil, the last days, the last dispensation. This is the last dispensation. It wasn't the last dispensation right after Christ died. That's not the last dispensation. This is the last dispensation, in my opinion. So the apostasy within the last dispensation is prophesied as well, and it is happening. And it's to separate the wheat from the tares, which is different from the wheat from the chaff, right? The wheat and the tares are growing together, and the tares are a waste. They're going to get burned. The chaff is the protection around the kernel, and it's just going to get blown into the wind, gone. And then you have the kernel. That's still us. We're getting beaten. We're on the threshing floor, and then that wheat, the real kernel, the real meaningful part is us. That's who we want to become, and we want all that waste stuff to get blown away. But that's a totally different thing than wheat and tares, and the tares are being separated. I don't want to be a tare. I know every day there's a wheat and tare within me. There's a wheat and tare within me. I think it's part of the human experience, and we just want that wheat to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and the tares to go away. Because the tares are going to be bundled, and they're going to be burned. They're going to be burned. And that's what's going to happen at Christ's coming. Okay, that's it, guys. And I'll put the link for Cardio Miracle as well. If you're feeling a little down and little, just don't have that kind of energy, I would encourage you to try it. It's not the cheapest stuff in the world. But in my opinion, you pay for what you get. And if it's something you can't afford, I understand that. Some are just on a really, really, really limited income. And I totally get that. And I think the Lord will qualify you in just doing the best you can with life. But if you can't afford it and you feel like it could help, I would highly recommend it. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.